So what did you do after you graduated from high school?
I went to Auburn, and this is how I picked Auburn, or Dad picked Auburn for me. And I had gotten a scholarship, or somebody was coming to the house to talk to us about a scholarship to go to MUW at the time, Mississippi. It was Mississippi University for Women or something, and he wanted to talk about doing a volleyball. Must not have, I mean, it must have been just when, because you could barely get scholarships or anything, but it was something along that lines. I wanted us to go there. I don't know if they was offering a scholarship, but he wanted me to go there.
Was that a volleyball scholarship?
It was volleyball and track, and but I remember it was like I had a discussion with him, and I think he wanted to meet Mom and Dad, and I wouldn't give him the phone number. I'm like, I don't want to go to another girls' school. And back then, you didn't go on campus, go look around at campus when you took we only took an ACT at that time. I didn't take an SAT. You took your ACT test, and it said you can have your application go to two schools. And so it was Alabama and Auburn, and I really liked Alabama always first. And Dad walked in my junior year, maybe it was the end of my junior year, or after we got that, and he goes, well, you did good. You're going to go to Auburn. I was like, okay. That was it.
No explanation.
No explanation. But I kind of figured I like to have a good time, and if I had gone to Alabama, it was a little bit more of a party school. I had a good time, enough good time at Auburn. I don't know if how it would have happened at Alabama. I think he knew I needed a little bit more discipline, and he liked the school better probably. I don't know. But so when I went to college, I was 17, and I was always the youngest in my class, but it really kind of caught up with me my freshman year a little bit. So anyway, I went to school on my freshman year, and I kind of did trying to do several different majors. I just didn't know what I wanted to do. So actually, my sophomore year, I stayed home in Mobile for 6 months, got a job as a teller at Merchants National Bank, and did that we were in a quarter system for the fall, and I went back to Auburn in the spring, which would have been my sophomore year. And it was Mr. Clarence Keller, who had been at Merchants Bank, said, major in business. If you're going to major in business, do it in accounting, because you probably have a lot more options. So I did that, and graduated in December '78. And then right after I graduated in accounting, I'd interviewed on campus, but I didn't know what I wanted to do. And I just wanted to go someplace else. And everybody was either going back to their hometown, going to Birmingham or Atlanta. And for some reason, I just didn't want to do that. And so the reason I picked Houston, because that's where I moved to after I got out of school, was Florida was too fast, And maybe Georgia, the only place was in Atlanta. Didn't want to stay in Alabama. There wasn't anything going on in Mississippi. Angie was in New Orleans, living in New Orleans at the time. So it's like, oh, well, there's Houston, and I think that's supposed to be a pretty good town. And we used to go through Houston or around Texas when we would go to Greene and to New Braunfels and everything. So I didn't know a soul, but didn't know that you were not supposed to know any, it would be nice to know somebody. I didn't know that, so I was like, well, that's all right, I'll do that. And so I went and interviewed and started to work. I started out in audit, and then for a bank there, and then my whole career, 95% of my career was in banking in Houston.
Mm-hmm.
So.
And so trace that just a little bit, like what your career was, So you started off there, and then what did you transition into? What were the other kind of roles, I guess?
Okay, so for banking, which is probably the most relevant of them all, I started out on the audit side, and then I got into if you're going to do anything in banking, I really wanted to get into the commercial lending part of things, mm-hmm. which is bigger businesses and lending to them, because that's where the revenue is. And most of the women, though, were in what they call the retail, like, at the branches, et cetera, or in the back office. So that was a little bit different. But they did have women in the credit training group, so I did that, and then went into the commercial lending side. And, when I was and it was a pretty large bank. I was with the first 15 years. We were like $9 billion. But I was the only woman commercial lender. There was a couple of corporate lenders, but there were very few women there at that time. And didn't know better, but it was just what I wanted to do, and I liked it, you know. So it was, and everybody's like, well, you know, the only woman. I'm like, yeah, but when I, and I'm in a meeting, I leave the room, you know, they're not going to remember the same 20 guys that had on the same suits and looked all the same. Maybe they won't want to remember me, but, you know, at least if I call them back, I'll know that they, you know, something. So anyway, so that's kind of where it ended up did with most of my career in commercial banking and mostly in commercial banking.
And so what positions did you have? What were your highest positions, I guess you would say?
I had several different positions at different banks because I moved banks a couple of times. And I used to call myself the Jacqueline of all trades. So I did syndicated lending, commercial lending, corporate lending. When I got into a little bit of management, I ran a credit training group for the state of Texas, which was fun. And then, you know, I managed a commercial lending group, managed a couple of different groups, you know, just...
So were you like a vice president?
I ended my career as an executive vice president, and the bank is about when we merge, will be a $12 billion bank. Smallest bank I've ever worked for, and it's like about a $6 billion bank. But I've worked for larger, and either, you know, the EVP kind of roles, or senior vice president.
Vice president.
Oh yeah, executive vice president or senior vice president.
What is that role? That's kind of like explain.
I don't know. For bigger banks, it's just kind of like middle management. You know, you have people reporting into you, and then you report up, and you take all the crap in the middle. Sorry. You try to filter everything down and lead the way.
There weren't that many women in those positions.
No, fewer.
And you were the first Bolling family woman who graduated from college.
Yeah, I never even realized that. It was just like that was. But you know, I graduated from college, but it never occurred to me to go further to get an MBA because we just, you know, didn't know to do that, right? And I thought about it when I was still working, like in my 30s, and then I just blew it off, got lazy, and didn't. What I wanted to aspire to really wasn't. You know, it'd been nice, but other things happened, so it's okay.